Welcome back to another episode of the What We're Watching podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jeni, and today we're talking about Sleepless in Seattle.
One of my favorites. This is one of my all-time faves.
One of your top 4, right?
I think so. If not, absolutely in my top 10. I love this one.
Yeah. I have a confession about this movie.
Okay.
I think the When Harry Met Sally syndrome happened here somehow.
Okay.
If you recall, last year when we covered When Harry Met Sally, I was like, I could have sworn that I had seen this movie. And then when I watched it, I remembered absolutely nothing. That's what happened with this movie. I was like, I haven't seen You've Got Mail, but I've definitely seen Sleepless in Seattle. That must be the one Nora Ephron, Meg Ryan movie that I've seen.
But no.
Megan, I didn't even remember that the Empire State Building is involved. So that really means I couldn't have seen it, right?
Right. And what did you think?
I thought it was really cute. I actually think this is my second favorite.
Okay.
Of the trifecta, When Harry Met Sally's first, then Sleepless in Seattle, then You've Got Mail.
I actually would not be surprised if that's a lot of people's order.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah. I feel like You've Got Mail is probably third.
Isn't that the order it came out in, too?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Also, Meg Ryan is so cute in this movie. Her hairstyles the entire time, like all of those knots and braids and things. I was like, this is so cute. Ugh. In like every Nora Ephron movie, I loved the sets.
Yeah, the aesthetic is perfect. And I agree. I'm obsessed with her hair in this movie. Every single scene she's in, I'm looking at her hair.
I do think this is more of a Valentine's movie than a New Year's movie. What do you think?
It is. I don't know what in my brain thought that they met on top of the Empire State Building on New Year's. And so I was like, oh, great. This would be a great New Year's movie. No.
You were thinking of the New Year's scene in When Harry Met Sally,
Yes.
I think.
I think so too. And that's so funny because when we put the poll up on our Instagram asking you guys to vote on our New Year's episode between Bridget Jones's Diary and this movie, my sister even called me and was like, you have to do Sleepless in Seattle. It's the perfect New Year's movie. And I Googled it, and sure enough, it really has nothing to do with New Year's, but it feels very wintry.
There is a New Year's countdown at one part, and there's the holidays and like everything leading up to Valentine's Day. So I feel like it still is in this realm of a holiday, New Year's, seasonal kind of movie.
If it's the December through February vibe, I suppose.
I think so. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was good. I definitely saw a lot of similarities between this and You've Got Mail. Also, I'm like, how did I think I had seen this movie before? Okay, I had a backstory, Megan. I was telling Robert before I watched this. I was like, yeah, my friend in high school let me borrow her VHS, and I had a VHS combo DVD player that I played Sleepless in Seattle on and watched in my room in high school. I told him this whole story, and then I watched the movie and I was like, I've never seen this before.
You're like, did any of that actually happen? I don't know.
Maybe
it was just a different movie.
Could have been the same one. Could have been the Tom Hanks movie Philadelphia. Because I don't know, maybe Seattle, Philadelphia. And I do love the movie Philadelphia. And I swear, well, at least I loved it at the time. I don't know how it's aged. But yeah, my wires might have gotten crossed. I don't know.
Well, how exciting. I'm so glad to talk about this now.
Yeah.
Since you have a fresh perspective.
Yeah, zero memory of it if I have seen it.
Guys, this is my last episode before I go on maternity leave for a little bit.
Oh my gosh, so exciting.
I know. I can't wait. We're batching this, so it's a little bit earlier. So if you follow us on Instagram, you maybe have seen some baby announcements. So that's very exciting, but I'll be back soon. Don't worry.
Yeah, and you'll be stuck with me for a little while. We'll try to make it worth your while and fun, but thankfully we did batch a lot in advance, so you won't be stuck with me for too long.
And they won't be stuck with you because they love you.
Oh my gosh.
You have the best voice.
Goodbye. What a good friend. Is there anything you want to say about, like, I don't know, anything else about your pregnancy while you're still pregnant?
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do an episode when I come back talking about, like, pregnancy and birth and having a newborn. That would be nice.
I would love that.
Because I would like that right now.
Yeah.
Or like when I was earlier pregnant, like I loved watching or listening to content to just be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to expect. Like my baby is the first grandkid on both sides, like first grandkid, first great grandkid. So I'm one of the first in my close friend group to have a baby. So I mean, as an oldest daughter, this is like not crazy to just be like, we're gonna do it and see how it goes, but it is wild. So I would love to answer your guys' questions if you have any, or talk about my experience.
Maybe we'll have to cover what to expect when you're expecting, and then do like a combo episode and maybe like a shorter recap so we have more time.
I would love that.
It'd be fun.
And I love that movie. So it's a great idea.
Yay. Well, we are all so excited for you, Megan, and we hope you have the most wonderful maternity leave with your new family.
Thank you.
Yay.
Okay, so back to Sleepless in Seattle. The synopsis for this movie is, after the death of his wife, Sam Baldwin, played by Tom Hanks, moves to Seattle with his son Jonah. When Jonah calls into a talk radio program to find a new wife for his father, Sam grudgingly gets on the line to discuss his feelings. Annie Reed, played by Meg Ryan, a reporter in Baltimore, hears Sam speak and falls for him even though she is engaged. Unsure where it will lead, she writes Sam a letter asking him to meet her at the Empire State Building on Valentine's Day.
Two things. One, I'm so glad I didn't read the synopsis before watching because I was able to be very surprised by what happened.
Ooh.
I didn't know anything. The second thing I wanted to know, actually, is have we talked about why you love this movie so much?
No.
You grew up watching it, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if I know why. I love Meg Ryan. This era of Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, I love. I'm just obsessed with them. I don't know what it is. And the movie is so aesthetic. And I think I like that it's not quite as like overt as You've Got Mail. Like we talked a lot in the You've Got Mail episode about like they're just emotionally cheating the entire movie.
And in this one too.
But for whatever reason it feels different.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It doesn't feel that different, to be clear. It's still there. This is like a very clear Nora Ephron trope. But I think that doesn't get in the way as much for me in this one for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I think I just love Meg Ryan. She's just so lovable in this movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it is a good movie, so I get it.
It actually came out on June 25th in 1993, which feels wild.
Random? That feels very random.
That's like when Halloween movies come out and we always say that that's weird. But this is a Valentine's Day movie. Why wasn't it in theaters on Valentine's Day?
Or in December, at least.
Yeah, this would have been a great like Christmas or Thanksgiving release.
Okay, yeah, I'm so confused. I'm very confused by that.
We've mentioned this a couple of times, but it was written and directed by Nora Ephron, who also wrote and directed You've Got Mail and When Harry Met Sally. We have episodes on both of those. Actually, When Harry Met Sally was our New Year's episode last year.
Yeah.
Nora Ephron also wrote Julie and Julia, Bewitched, Hanging Up, Mixed Nuts, and more. And she's very much known for writing scripts with strong female characters, and obviously for working with Meg Ryan a lot, and Tom Hanks. Nora Ephron has actually been nominated for 3 Oscars for Best Screenplay, including Silkwood, When Harry Met Sally, and Sleepless in Seattle.
Okay.
Which is cool. We don't see a lot of rom-coms get nominated for Best Screenplay or any of the huge categories anymore.
No, now it's all like really intense dramas, I feel like.
Which this is the shortest side tangent of all time. I was thinking the other day about how interesting it is that the Grammys tend to swing popular. Like, I feel like all the albums that get nominated for Best Album are the most popular albums. Not always, not in every category, but overall. Not necessarily like this is the best artistic album, but the Oscars really go for like artistic value, I feel.
That's a really good point.
Kind of weird.
Yeah, because I'm sure there are so many amazing albums out there that deserve a Grammy so much, and they just don't get seen.
But like the albums that are going to get nominated for the most part are like the biggest pop stars or the biggest stars. Like it's going to be your Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter, which I love. But it is interesting that for the Oscars nominations come out. I haven't seen 2/3 of the movies. And all we do is watch movies.
I know. Then I'm introduced to these new movies and I'm like, oh, okay, well, it was nominated, so I'll check it out, you know?
Yeah, just interesting. Okay, anyway, back to Sleepless in Seattle. Nora Ephron gave this quote about Sleepless in Seattle. She said, "Our dream was to make a movie about how movies screw up your brain about love. And then if we did a good job, we would become one of the movies that would screw up people's brains about love forever."
Wait, I kind of love that.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Because I think the whole struggle that we see Meg Ryan's character Annie have throughout the movie, which I think is very relatable to a lot of people, or at least I feel like it has been to me, which maybe is part of why I love this movie, is the debate between like, is love this like big magical you know when you know feeling, or is it an everyday choice? And I think the answer we get to is that it's both.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to see Meg Ryan's character struggle with that throughout the movie. And I think Nora Ephron is totally right that that comes from like the pop culture and movie depiction of love and how that messes with people. Like I have seen long-term relationships around me, like of my friends or you know, people that I love, those relationships fall apart because people are like, I'm supposed to know. It's supposed to be this magic huge thing. I think that's something a lot of, if you're in your later 20s or 30s, I feel like you've probably witnessed this, where there are a lot of people in your friend groups that probably get engaged and get married, and then there are people that have been together for a long time that break up. And I think a lot of times it comes down to this struggle that happens in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And then there's something to be said about the you just know thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because with my fiance, I just knew pretty soon. But we waited a really long time to get engaged because we're both like, we're enjoying this season of our lives and we're not like ready to get engaged and have a wedding and do all of that stuff yet. And so we kind of just like took our sweet time, but we both always talked about getting married. And then I remember that I had an ex who I was with for a really, really long time before my fiance. And I was like, man, everything seems fine. But like, I just don't know if he's the one.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I always came up with is like, well, but nothing's wrong. Everything seems right. So why would I give this up? I'm just having this like weird logical debate where I'm like, I guess it's illogical actually, but where I'm like, I'm supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turned out he was doing some shady stuff, and maybe it was my intuition telling me that there was a reason why I didn't know.
Jeni, you should get out of the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think it just maybe depends on the person, but I think this is kind of an interesting topic, and I love that this is the theme that Nora Ephron played with throughout the movie.
Me
It's
too.
cool.
I totally agree. I read that of the 3 movies that star Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, this is the most successful financially and critically. We've talked about 2 of them. Nora did 2 of them. You've Got Mail and this one, Sleepless in Seattle. And then I assume the third that they were talking about in this article is called Joe versus the Volcano.
I've never heard of that.
I had never heard of it either, but it also stars Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, and it came out in 1990. Like the 2 of them huge on the cover for the movie
Before
and everything.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they're like frequent duo, which is amazing. I love them together.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like a little surprised they never dated. But they were both always with people, like married to people when they were doing these movies, so it makes sense. So this movie is partly inspired by An Affair to Remember, which is referenced throughout the movie. And this reminded me a lot of You've Got Mail, also by Nora Ephron, which is lightly inspired by The Shop Around the Corner and Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
I love when you can just tell that the person doing a project has a type.
Yes.
Like Nora Ephron, all these movies have emotional cheating in them. They all have strong female characters. A lot of them have Meg Ryan and or Tom Hanks. And they're inspired by other famous romance movies.
Yeah, and they have an amicable breakup scene between Meg Ryan and someone else.
Yes, where everyone's smiling.
Yeah, there's so many things. Well, I'm so excited to jump into this. Do you want to talk about the cast?
Let's do it.
Let's start with Meg Ryan, who plays Annie Reed.
So we talked about her in our When Harry Met Sally episode and the You've Got Mail episode. And in those episodes, we talk about her marriage to Dennis Quaid, her kids, and her birth name, which is very interesting. So I tried to pull some different fun facts for us to talk about in this one. The first thing I want to talk about is that the original Sleepless in Seattle script was actually developed before Nora was involved. This is going to get back around to Meg Ryan, I promise. And I just wanted to say this is actually very common in Hollywood, where a writer will write a script for a movie, and then that movie gets rewritten by a famous screenwriter, and they kind of take over the project from there. Even if it's not by a famous person, a lot of times another screenwriter ends up taking over, and they are the ones credited for writing the movie. I believe a lot of times if you see a, quote, story by credit in the credits, that story by person is usually the person that wrote the original script.
Mm. Okay, got it.
But then the written by credit goes to the people that actually worked on the project once it was actually going to happen.
Gotcha.
In this case, the original script was written by Jeff Arch, and I believe he's credited both for story and for writing, so I think he helped with some of the rewrites too. TriStar Pictures, the production company, originally sent that Jeff Arch script to Meg Ryan and her husband, Dennis Quaid, because they were married. We talked about him a lot in the Parent Trap episode. So it got sent to them to play the two leads, which I think is fascinating. But because there was a lot of work that needed to happen on the project, like they needed a new writer, they needed a director, and Meg also got pregnant during this process, they kind of dropped it for a while. But then after Meg had her baby and after Nora was attached, Meg read Nora's new version of the script and immediately knew that she wanted to get involved.
Cool.
Yeah. However, I also read that Julia Roberts was offered the role. So maybe that was kind of like in between.
Wait, I could totally see this being a Julia Roberts movie too.
Totally.
But obviously Meg Ryan crushed.
She was meant for it. And I love that she was like involved in talks about the script from the very beginning and that they were debating having her and Dennis do it because I actually think he would have been great in this too.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Tom Hanks who plays Sam Baldwin.
We obviously talked about him in our You've Got Mail episode, including his children, including Chet Hanks. Everybody, we talked about Chet.
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me.
How could you forget? And how Tom got into acting originally. So if you want to know about that, check out that episode. But he was 30 when he did Sleepless in Seattle, and he had been married to his wife, Rita Wilson, for 5 years. And Rita is also in this movie as his sister, Susie.
Oh, okay. I saw her credits at the beginning of the movie, and I was like, oh, Rita Wilson is in this movie. Cool, I'll watch out for her. And then I completely forgot and didn't recognize her.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Rita actually originally auditioned for Annie's best friend, Becky, who is played by Rosie O'Donnell. And she said, quote, I saw When Harry Met Sally and This Is Your Life, and I saw that Nora wrote women really, really well. I loved that she cast Carrie Fisher in those really vocal, fun roles. And when Tom was offered the script for Sleepless in Seattle, I read it and I fell in love with the character that Rosie O'Donnell played in the movie. I ran into Nora Ephron at a party at the producer Linda Obst's house, and I said, Nora, if you don't cast Carrie Fisher in that role, I would love to audition for you.
Wow, cool. Wouldn't that be funny having Carrie Fisher be Meg Ryan's best friend again?
Yeah.
Because she was in When Harry Met Sally too.
Yeah. But it would track, because she seems to like to cast the same people.
Yeah, true.
Apparently, Nora Ephron knew that she wanted to cast Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks to play the leads in this movie, but Tom was very reluctant to do it. He was interviewed by an author named Erin Carlson for her book, I'll Have What She's Having, which is obviously a reference to When Harry Met Sally. And he said, quote, I was an extremely cranky actor at the time, coming in and saying, why does the kid have so many good lines? I had made enough movies to get smoked on a couple of occasions, as well as thinking that I was a big shot and, quote, my voice must be heard.
Oh, wow. I didn't know he was like that back in the day.
I guess he had a diva era.
Okay. Interesting. Good to know.
I appreciate that he knows it.
He came clean.
And he came clean.
Also, you know who also came clean about their diva era? Anne Hathaway. Remember she said something like, I was 19 or 20 and I thought I knew better than everybody else. But really I was so green as an actor and I should have been listening to the directors and producers more. And she kind of just explained it and I was like, I respect that. We talk about that in our Hatha Hate episode. I think that was on the Princess Diaries. Is that right?
I think so.
We did a deep dive on the Hatha Hate and when people all turned on Anne Hathaway. That's what this is reminding me of.
I'm sure it's so, so, so common in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
To just get a big head, act a little nuts. Nobody tells you to stop it or to knock it off, or I guess eventually somebody does, and you have to then make up for that. Or I'm sure a lot of people don't. A lot of people, I'm sure, just keep doing what they're doing. But I just thought it was interesting to hear that about him in this movie because he's so endearing in this movie, and he comes across as just like the sweetest dad, and yet sassy behind the scenes.
Hollywood is somewhere where it seems like it doesn't matter if you're a jerk. People will respect your talent and still hire you for stuff. And that is just not the case in every industry.
No. Because I think money is tied to them in a way that like allows them to, which is true, I would say also of like C-suite execs. A lot of times, like sometimes they get big heads or don't always act in the interest of other people, but because they're going to make the company a lot of money, people overlook it. Same with big stars. Unfortunately.
Yeah, they're like, they're going to carry this movie, so.
And it worked. This is the most financially successful of the three that at least Tom and Meg did together.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Ross Malinger, who plays Jonah Baldwin, Sam's son.
He is so cute.
I know.
Ugh.
I recognized him, but I couldn't really. The only thing I could find that he was in was an animated thing.
Yeah, he really did not do much acting, and he left Hollywood very quickly.
Okay, because he was. Did you ever see the show Recess? Or like the movie Recess School's Out?
I don't think I ever saw it.
Okay, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know of it.
It's like an animated cartoon, and he played the main character, TJ Detweiler.
Okay. He was also in Toothless, Homeward Bound 2, and Nick Freno. Nick Freno? I'm probably butchering that. Someone's screaming. Nick Freno, Licensed Teacher, and Sudden Death. I did a couple of other things. So he did like a handful of projects as a kid. But he did end up leaving acting, like I think as a teen or maybe as a very young adult. He only acted as a kid. And now he works in finance at a car dealership in the LA area.
Wait, go off. Love that.
I know. When they were casting for this role, they actually looked at a ton of child stars at the time, including some names you guys will know: Elijah Wood, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ben Savage, Ryder Strong, Jason Schwartzman, and Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I did not know that most of these people were child stars.
Yeah, I guess so.
Especially Jason Schwartzman. That's Michael from Princess Diaries' brother.
Oh, yeah.
And he's been in so many things. We talk about him all the time, but he's someone who, like, I forget what he's actually in. Oh, The Hunger Games, the new prequel that came out. He's Lucky Flickerman. Sorry, I'm going off on such a tangent, but that is crazy. Those are all really famous actors who I do not remember as kids.
I know. Even crazier, they actually cast someone named Nathan Watt, but then they changed their mind after a few days of filming.
They were like, you can't do it.
I guess. I don't know if he just wasn't a good actor or if he didn't get along with somebody or what. I don't know what happened.
Poor kiddo.
And so ultimately they cast Ross. And Tom Hanks said this about him. Tom said, "He was an 8-year-old who understood that there's a difference between saying the lines and playing around. I don't know what it was, but as soon as we started work with Ross, it was the movie. Inexplicable."
Cute. He was so talented.
He made the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was so cute.
He reminds me so much of the young actor who plays Charlie in the Santa Claus movie.
I was thinking that.
They have the same attitude.
Yes.
And it's like we see him and a dad, and a comedian dad, where like these kids can just hold their own with Tom Hanks and Tim Allen in that movie. Anyway, they are so similar in my mind.
That's so funny. I think they look kind of similar too, because I definitely had the exact same thought. I was like, why do I recognize this kid? And then I thought, well, is he the kid from the Santa Claus? And then I looked it up and he wasn't. And so anyway.
They just look alike.
They do. All right, should we get into the movie?
Let's do it. So when the movie opens, we see Sam, played by Tom Hanks, and his son Jonah, played by Ross Malinger, standing in a cemetery, and we're in Chicago, and Sam explains to his son that his mom just got sick. It isn't fair, there isn't a good reason, and there's nothing anyone could do. He says, quote, "But if we start asking why, we'll go crazy." So now, obviously, we know that Sam's wife and Jonah's mom has recently passed away.
We see a few short scenes of Sam at home and at work. He's clearly not okay, but he's doing his best to cope. Everyone is giving him cards for therapists and support groups. And he's very frustrated. And at one point, he just kind of lets go and he yells at his coworker and then apologetically says, "Don't mind him. He's just the guy who lost his wife." Then he says, what they really need is a change, a new city, someplace where he doesn't think of Maggie everywhere he goes. He says he's going to Seattle.
I love when a movie does a good job with grief. We've talked about this before, but just to see somebody that's going through it and have it feel like you get to see them not be like a lovable character, but just like be kind of a dick and like have a hard time is refreshing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Then Sam's sister Susie, played by Rita Wilson, takes him and Jonah to the airport and reassures him that he'll start dating soon. And Sam gets upset at this and says it just doesn't happen twice.
That made me really sad.
Yeah.
Then we see on-screen text that says, Baltimore, 18 months later. It's Christmas Eve. Annie, played by Meg Ryan, and her fiancé Walter, played by Bill Pullman, who we talked about in our Casper episode, They pack their cars with their Christmas gifts and they go over Annie's family tree because they're visiting her family for the holidays. And so she's telling Walter about who's who so that he's prepared.
At dinner, Annie announces to her family that she and Walter are engaged, and everyone is so excited about this and congratulates them. I always get nervous watching this scene that like someone's going to be mad because like this is the 90s. I don't know. It feels like a kind of traditional house and family. So it's always weird to me when like in these movies, this happens in Father of the Bride too. They're just like, we're engaged and everyone's genuinely happy and nobody's like, you should have asked for permission, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say I was dying laughing at this scene because Walter starts sneezing because he's apparently allergic to everything. Yeah. And his sneeze is so funny.
Yeah.
It was great.
Just aggressively sneezing the whole time. Everyone's like, wow, welcome to the family. Congratulations. He's just like having an allergy attack in the middle of the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
That night, Annie spends time with her mom and she tries on her grandmother's wedding dress. The two women gush about Walter and how amazing he is. And her mom asks how they got together. And Annie explains that they were accidentally given each other sandwiches from the same deli for lunch one day. She says, "You make a million decisions that mean nothing, and then one day you order takeout and it changes your life." Her mom says it was destiny, but Annie disagrees. She says, "Mom, destiny is something we've invented because we can't stand the fact that everything that happens is accidental." But then her mom describes meeting her husband and how she immediately knew it. And I think Annie's like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "It felt like magic," and she knew that he was the one, basically. Her mom says, "The same way you feel about Walter."
Just like, you know, exactly how you're feeling right now.
And Annie is just kind of confused, and we just see that she does not feel this way about Walter at all.
Annie and Walter drive separate cars to Walter's family's house that night. I think it's because Annie like has to go do something for work the next day, so they're going to have to drive separately. And so in Annie's car, she surfs the radio and hears an 8-year-old boy named Jonah call into a radio show. The radio show is asking people what their Christmas wishes are, and Jonah says that his mom died and he thinks his dad needs a new wife because he's sad, and that's his Christmas wish. And the radio host is this psychologist, she's a doctor, and she makes Jonah give the phone to his dad when Jonah like says their story. And the radio host asks Sam, Jonah's dad, about his wife, about her passing, about the fact that he doesn't sleep, and whether he's moved on. They have this like long, almost therapy session. And he makes a comment that meeting his wife for the first time was like magic, the same thing that Annie's mom said. So now she's hearing this twice in one night. And the radio host nicknames him Sleepless in Seattle.
Annie is a journalist. This is so 90s, 2000s rom-com of them to do.
Definitely.
The next week at work, Annie and her coworkers talk about the radio show. Apparently 2,000 women called in to try to get Sam's phone number, and the show was a huge hit everywhere. Her coworker and best friend Becky, played by Rosie O'Donnell, immediately clocks that something is off with Annie and insinuates that she might be interested in the Sleepless in Seattle guy, but Annie insists that she's madly in love with Walter. And I do have to say, I really loved Rosie O'Donnell's character, Becky.
Me
I thought
too.
she did a great job.
She did a great job. I love their friendship in this movie because it's like there's so much support and also tough love, and they're very vulnerable with each other. It's great. Then Annie and Walter go to a New Year's Eve party. This is the New Year's Eve part, I guess, that I was thinking of.
Yes.
Even though I definitely thought the entire plot was revolving around New Year's. Whatever. While they're dancing at this party, Annie and Walter make plans to go to New York City for Valentine's Day. Meanwhile, we see Sam watching the ball drop on TV, and then he puts Jonah to bed and he watches the fireworks by himself, and he imagines Maggie is with him on the couch.
Wait, I don't know that I caught that Annie was already planning to go to New York City for Valentine's Day. So we need to unpack that when the next step of that plan comes.
Yes.
Because I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
Sam starts getting fan mail, and he gets tons and tons of letters from women who heard him on the radio. He lectures Jonah for giving out their address to so many people. And Jonah reads a bunch of the letters, and we can tell that he's loving this, but Sam says that he would rather meet someone in real life.
The next morning, Jonah and Sam are brushing their teeth, and Jonah asks his dad, "If you get a new wife, I guess you'll have sex with her, huh?" And Sam just spits out his toothpaste in shock. Jonah tells him that the reason he asks this is because his best friend Jed has cable.
I love the dynamic between Jonah and Sam.
Me too.
It's so cute. I actually think, too, that the first thing Jonah says about sex, Sam is not totally shocked yet. He's just like, yeah, that would happen.
I think he says hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, something like that. And I was just like, I've never heard a conversation like this.
Yeah, no, the longer version of this is Jonah asks if he's going to have sex with his new wife. And Sam is just immediately like, well, yeah, I hope so. And then Jonah is like, and is she going to scratch your back? Because that's what they do in the movies when they're having sex. Right. Women scratch the man's back. And that's when Sam spits out his toothpaste and is like, what?
Thank you so much for reiterating that because I forgot everything. And I'm so glad you've seen the movie so many times that you could share that because that is so funny. It was a great scene.
Yeah, I do love that their relationship is like, it does remind me also of the relationship in the Santa Claus where like they're just open because it's like the dad is just doing the best he can, you know? Yeah. He's not trying to shield his son from everything.
It's cute. One night, Annie can't sleep and she listens to the same radio show she heard Sam on. They even play a clip of Sam talking about his late wife. And as he talks, Annie peels an apple in one long strip, but she slowly stops and starts crying. And you can tell she's so deeply bothered by this whole story. It's just so upsetting to her. And it's really making her question things.
It is interesting that this like phenomenon is happening around Sam when he just went on a radio show and said that he really loved his wife and that he lost her.
Yeah.
Like, I totally understand that it's endearing and it's very sweet. And to hear a man be vulnerable about his feelings and how much he loves his wife at this time especially wouldn't have been that common. But it is interesting that then everyone is throwing themselves at him.
Yeah.
When, like, he seems clearly not ready for that.
And we didn't get a ton of details about him either.
No.
It's funny. I do think that for Annie in particular, it's because her mom said what she said.
Totally. And then she heard Sam say the exact same thing about meeting his wife.
So she's like, wait a second, like maybe that's what I need.
Yeah, it's sort of two-pronged. Like, oh, I'm interested in him. This like whole thing is happening. But also it makes me realize that maybe my situation is not what I want.
Yeah.
So this is actually a fun little cameo. When Annie is listening to the radio, they play clips from a few different calls. And one of them is from a caller they named Disappointed in Denver. And that caller is voiced by Nora Ephron.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. The next day, Annie barges into her brother's office and asks why he got married. She's like trying to get to the bottom of why people do this. And I think she's just looking for reassurance that like other people feel the same as her. And he gives a very logical answer about why he got married, similar to how she has talked about marriage so far. So this does make her feel better. And she goes on a huge rant about how she's having fantasies about Sleepless in Seattle guy. But then she tells herself that everyone gets cold feet before their weddings. So that must be what's happening.
Here it is. It's like the intuition is telling her that something is off. But she's like, but Walter's a great guy. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong here.
Mm-hmm. We see her rationalize a lot throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Where we see her go, I don't know. But then she's like, but Walter is so amazing and I'm so lucky to be with him and he's the best. And she just shoves it down.
When she's also consistently getting the ick from him,
mm-hmm.
She goes, Walter, have you ever been called anything else? Even when you were a kid? And he's like, it's just Walter. And she's like, ew.
And she's openly telling everyone that she's obsessed with this radio man. Like, she's telling her brother, she's telling her coworker at work. It is like You've Got Mail in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. At work, Sam's coworker tells him that women are just looking for a guy with a cute butt and pecs, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
They go to lunch and talk about how much dating has changed since Sam was on the market, which was quite a while ago. Sam is an architect, and his coworker tells him that he should ask out Victoria, the decorator, on one of their jobs.
When Sam comes home, he finds Jonah in his room with a girl named Jessica, another 8-year-old. Jessica is played by Gabby Hoffman. And they're sitting together in this little, like, swivel egg chair. And it's as if Sam has walked in on his, like, teenage son with the girl, where he, like, opens the door and he's like, what's going on? Who are you? And, like, he gets introduced to Jessica. And then Jonah is like, you can close the door, Dad. And then he, like, Sam leaves it cracked. And he's, like, very suspicious of what's going on. I just thought the scene was so cute.
It was so cute.
And then Sam calls Victoria and asks her out. And he sounds so, like, nervous and awkward, but he's also very excited. And it's really cute.
Annie and Becky watch An Affair to Remember. And Annie is distraught by how in love everyone seems in the movie. We see that she's writing a letter to Sam on her typewriter. And Becky says, "What about Walter?" And Annie immediately switches gears and talks about how incredible Walter is. But we can tell that Becky either doesn't agree with her or doesn't believe what she's saying because she knows her so well. And then Annie goes right back to writing her letter. She says she needs to meet the Sleepless in Seattle man because what if he's her destiny and she never meets him? The characters in their movie are on the Empire State Building, so she asks to meet him on top of the Empire State Building on Valentine's Day. While she's writing, Annie casually says, "I'll be in New York with Walter. I can squeeze it in." And then she realizes what she just said and she crumples the letter up. And I was just like, how dare you?
Yeah, how dare you?
You're like making plans with another man that you've never met, that you've just heard on the radio.
When you're going to New York on Valentine's Day with your fiance.
Horrible.
I cannot imagine even just like having this train of thought.
No.
But that's why this is a problem, you know?
Yes.
Wow. I literally spent the entirety of the You've Got Mail episode being like, this is not acceptable. And now I'm like, but her relationship isn't right for her. So it's okay. I don't know why. I think it's just because I feel so much more invested in Meg Ryan's character in this movie for some reason. And so.
But it's bad. It's
bad. It is bad.
It's definitely bad.
Yeah.
It just feels less bad than You've Got Mail for some reason.
Yeah.
Even though they're engaged, which is a lot more serious.
True.
Wait, I'm rethinking
Is
now.
it worse?
Oh, maybe.
I don't think it's worse.
No. I don't think it was right for her to just continue being in a relationship with Walter when she felt this way.
Yes.
That's really what it is. It's not that she realized Walter wasn't the right one for her. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, I feel like it should have been, wow, I'm having this crisis. I should end my engagement.
Or pause it or something.
Yes. And then realize that half of why I'm having this crisis is because I have feelings for this guy on the radio, not just because I was unhappy.
Yeah.
Because those things are also definitely conflated in this movie, and that is not healthy, for sure.
No.
For sure not. Anyway, I do kind of love the part where she, like, hears herself say, "I'll be in New York with Walter, I can squeeze it in," and then is just, like, horrified, and so then she crumples the letter up, you know?
Yeah.
And in her defense, she never mails the letter. Just saying.
True.
Okay. Then we see poor Jonah has a nightmare and he wakes up like sweating and he's screaming for his mom. Broke my heart. And Sam runs to him and they end up talking about Maggie because she used to sing Jonah back to sleep whenever he had nightmares. And Jonah asks Sam, his dad, if he believes in heaven, and Sam says, "I never did, or the whole idea of an afterlife. But now I don't know, because I have these dreams about your mom and we have long talks about you and how you're doing, which she knows, but I tell her anyway. So what is that? It's sort of an afterlife, isn't it?" And Jonah says that he's starting to forget her. Sob.
So sad.
So Sam starts telling him about her, including the fact that she could peel an entire apple in one curly strip, which is just like what we saw Annie doing.
At work, Annie uses her journalism and research skills to get info on Sam and Jonah. First, she tells people she's doing a piece on call-in radio shows to get Sam's home phone number. She's so creepy in this scene.
She's so creepy.
She calls them, and when she hears their voicemail, she learns their last name, Baldwin. She searches on her computer and ends up finding their old Chicago address, and she requests a background check on Sam.
This is like full stalker level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like it's beyond just stalking their Instagram, you know,
Yeah.
and like finding every internet presence that they have. It's like, oh, you're requesting a background check.
And photos from a private investigator. Yeah. Yeah. If this was not as like romanticized, this would be so highly problematic. And it is, but like it's so romanticized in this movie. But like,
Yeah.
if this was like my friend who was engaged, who was obsessing over some guy that she saw on Instagram, let's say, like in a TikTok video or something, and she was like obsessed with him and stalking him and wanted to meet him, but she was engaged, I would be like, we're not okay.
I'm terrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because Meg Ryan is so charming.
She is.
I feel like we're meant to think that there's like some magical thread that's connecting them,
Mm-hmm.
that they're just like drawn to each other and they can't help it. So that makes us feel a little bit better about the stalkeriness, I think.
It just is what Nora Ephron said. Like, they made a movie that is doing the thing where it, like, messes up your perception of love because it's overly romanticized, which was her intention. So then it's time for Sam's date with Victoria. Again, that's the decorator that he worked with on some of his architecture projects. And he is freaking out and, like, thinking that he looks stupid and just feels very self-conscious before the date. And while he's losing his mind, Jonah is on the couch reading Annie's letter, which made it to them. And he makes Sam read it because Annie mentions a baseball player that Sam also loves, but Sam just dismisses the whole thing because Baltimore is too far away.
Jonah calls the restaurant during Sam's date to ask if they can go to New York for Valentine's Day so they can meet Annie. Sam is very obviously frustrated by this, and he ends the call. And then he goes back to his date, and while he's on the date, we see a private investigator taking photos of him.
Then we cut to Sam and Jonah at a grocery store with Victoria, and Sam tells Jonah that Victoria is going to cook for them, so we can assume that this is their next date or maybe several dates later, and Jonah is clearly not into this situation, and he actually stays cranky for the entire grocery store trip and the dinner. And then after dinner, after Jonah goes to bed, he sneaks back downstairs to eavesdrop, and he sees Sam and Victoria kiss, and he immediately runs to the phone to call the radio show.
So
because he doesn't
cute.
know how to feel.
Becky calls Annie to wake her up, and she tells her to turn on the radio show, and Jonah recounts the entire evening on the radio. Victoria made them dinner, and now Sam and Victoria are kissing, and he's freaking out. The psychologist says this is all good news because his dad is moving on, which is what he wanted. And Jonah says, "She's a hoe! My dad's been captured by a hoe!" Which, like, I don't know where he gets that from. At all.
Cable. Jed's cable, I guess.
Yeah. This woman is, like, also the sweetest woman.
Yeah, she's great.
She's like the Walter, you know?
Yeah.
The psychologist tells Jonah to calm down, so he hangs up and he screams.
It's like as if he saw a ghost. He's just like, ah! He just, like, doesn't, I think he just has an explosion of emotion.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Annie is hiding in a broom closet listening to the radio show while she's on the phone with Becky. And Walter opens the door and she screams. So we're seeing these like parallel scenes of Jonah and Annie. Jonah lies and tells his dad that he thought he saw a black widow spider. And at the same time, Annie lies and tells Walter that Becky thought her husband was on a radio show, but it was just a different guy. And then we see Jonah and Annie both have trouble going back to sleep.
The next day at work, Annie tells Becky that she's looking into doing a story about radio shows. Becky goes along with this and tells her she'll have to travel to learn more for the story. At home, she tells Walter she had no choice but to travel for work and that she'll meet him in New York. Meanwhile, Jonah and Jessica write a letter back to Annie.
Then Sam and Jonah take Victoria to the airport and they walk her to the gate, and after she gets on her plane, Sam has a talk with Jonah about how it's always going to be an adjustment for both of them whenever he dates people. And he says, no one is perfect. He's basically just trying to like get Jonah to come around to Victoria. And he says, no one is perfect, but as he's saying that sentence, he's stopped in his tracks because he sees Annie walk off the plane. And she walks right by him and he immediately turns to follow her, and he's just, you can tell he's awestruck.
Annie goes to Sam and Jonah's house, but the boys had just left on their boat, so she just misses them. And they actually live on a houseboat, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Annie drives to catch up with them, and she hides to watch them play on the beach, and it's very cute. She tells Becky on the phone later that she just watched Sam because she couldn't approach him, but she promises to talk to him the next day. Becky reassures her that she isn't being crazy. I feel like it's something where, if I remember correctly, Annie is like, am I being crazy? And Becky's like, the weird thing is that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're supposed to believe there's just like this underlying need for this to happen, you know?
Yeah, Becky, I think, has just come to the acceptance of like, you're not happy, you need to see this through and figure out what's going on so that you can move on. So she's supportive.
A supportive friend, a girl's girl.
True. The next day, Annie follows Sam again, and right as she's about to cross the street to say hi to him, she sees another woman run up to Sam and Jonah. But we, as the audience, see that it's just Susie, Sam's sister, but she's like running up and hugging Jonah, and so Annie backs off immediately. A truck honks at Annie because she's in the road, and Sam looks up because of the honk, and he sees her, and he's immediately drawn to her, just like he was in the airport. And so he walks to the other side of the road to say hello, but cars keep honking, so like they can't actually meet and have a conversation.
We cut to Becky picking Annie up from the airport, and Annie admits that she could only say hello to Sam and that she feels embarrassed because he was with another woman. When they get back to Annie's apartment, she shows Becky the pictures of Sam on a date from the private detective. She thinks Susie was Victoria, and they do have the same hair.
Mm-hmm. But then she finds Jonah's letter, which she thinks is from Sam, and Becky admits that she mailed Annie's crumpled up letter. So, again, remember when Annie was like, I'll squeeze him in when I'm in New York with Walter, and realized what she said and crumpled up the letter. Becky grabbed the letter and must have mailed it. And so the girls read what they think is Sam's response, but we know was Jonah and Jessica, the 8-year-olds, writing a response.
It was very obvious.
It's definitely written like a kid wrote it, yeah.
I was like, why didn't they think like, he has a son. This is written like a kid would write this. Yeah. I don't know.
Instead, they're just like, oh, he can't write. He's bad with words.
I do like how that was kind of an ick, though.
Mm-hmm, it was.
We cut to Sam telling Susie about the mystery woman that he saw in the airport and then in the street. He says it felt like he knew her. Then he tells Susie about the radio show and Jonah's recent obsession with Annie. He also mentions that Annie wants to meet them on top of the Empire State Building on Valentine's Day. Susie immediately knows that this is a reference to An Affair to Remember, and that's the movie that gave Becky and Annie the idea.
After hearing this, Jonah is curious about the movie, so Jonah and his best friend Jessica watch An Affair to Remember together, and they brainstorm how they're going to get Jonah to New York, since Jonah only has $80, which is a lot of money, actually, for an 8-year-old.
Especially in the 90s.
Yeah. Jessica tells him that that's enough for a cab, but not enough for the plane ticket. But then they remember that Jessica's mom is a travel agent, so they use her computer to get Jonah's ticket. And they include the fact that he's 12, so that he's allowed to fly alone, even though he's actually only 8. And this makes Jonah very nervous, so Jessica says that she'll include a note that Jonah is just short for his age, and no one should ask him about it because he's self-conscious.
Then it's time for Annie to go to New York. She's excited to go with Walter and tells Becky she's totally over Sleepless in Seattle guy. When she meets up with Walter, he remarks that she has seemed a little off since Christmas, but that it feels like she's back to herself now. She reassures him that she was scared by the idea of forever, but that she feels so much better now.
And then we see a series of short scenes where they're going into stores and looking for stuff for their registry. And in every scene, she's continuing to justify her feelings and why she was having cold feet. Like she keeps just being like, it was just that you did blah, blah, blah. But I realize that's silly. And we just see this over and over again. And then while they're looking at China, she says, you have to grow up. You can't keep having these adolescent fantasies about how exciting your life is going to be. Which she's like, again, justifying her own feelings. If I were Walter and I heard my fiance be like, I mean, I had to get over it because I was like fantasizing about how amazing my life could be.
That would kill me.
But instead I'm here with you. I'm jumping off a bridge.
Yeah, basically. Then Walter gives her a ring and it's gorgeous. And he slides it across the counter to her while they're in Tiffany's, I think.
I think so.
He says it was his mother's and he had it resized. And she says it's exactly the ring that she would have picked for herself. Then she says, there are people who would like a relationship to be full of surprises, but I am not one of those people. Surprises are highly overrated. And we definitely get the sense here that she's just saying this to comfort herself. She's lying to herself.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm like, he's perfect.
Yeah, this is very nice. I think she's referring to the fact that like he didn't actually propose. Like I think this was one of those, I feel like we just watched a movie where this happened. Where they were like, no, I didn't need a ring. We just decided that we were gonna get engaged. But
it was just a mutual thing.
Yeah, but like, so I didn't need it. It's fine. But you can tell that that's actually what she would have wanted. And
that
then
makes sense.
In this moment, he's just like hands it to her. And I think she's like, who needs surprises anyway? You know?
And then on top of it, it's a ring that she would have picked out. So she's not even surprised by what ring he chose, you know?
Right. Yeah. Which again, like logically, I think she's going, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But like emotionally, she's sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, back in Seattle, Sam is packing for a weekend trip with Victoria, and Jonah is upset because he wants his dad to give Annie a chance, and they get in this big, like, yelling argument with each other.
Then Jonah's babysitter comes to watch him, but Sam can't find Jonah anywhere. And we cut to Sam and Jessica's parents asking Jessica where Jonah is. Jessica admits that he's on the way to New York.
And then we see Jonah get to New York, and he tells the cab driver that he's there to meet his new mother. And he spends all day asking people on top of the Empire State Building if they're Annie. I read that they actually built a replica of the Empire State Building's observation deck for this movie since they couldn't film on the actual building.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering that. I was like, did they just rent the building? Can they do that?
I think they tried. I read that Nora really wanted them to do as much of their filming on site as possible, so they did actually film in Seattle and in Baltimore. But then for this, they had to build a set.
Gotcha. Annie and Walter go to a nice dinner with a great view of the Empire State Building for Valentine's Day, and Annie says she needs to tell him something.
And then we cut to Sam on his flight to New York, and he gets there and sprints through the airport to get a cab.
We cut to Jonah on top of the Empire State Building. It's getting dark, and we can tell that he's getting upset and sad because Annie isn't there.
And he's alone. He's 8 years old on top of this building in New York.
I know. Terrifying.
Then we cut back to Annie and Walter. And this is where we get the Nora Ephron special amicable breakup scene like you were mentioning. Annie tells Walter that she just can't do this anymore. And Walter says that he loves her, but he doesn't want to be someone that she settles for. And she hands him the ring back, and she looks out the window to see the Empire State Building lighting up with a heart on the side of the building. And she says, "It's a sign." Which at the beginning of the movie, she tells her mom that she doesn't believe in signs. And she tells Walter she has to go.
Sam runs onto the roof of the Empire State Building looking for Jonah, who runs to him as soon as he sees him. So they're reunited, and Sam is so relieved. And Sam says, "You're my family. You're all I've got." And Jonah says, "I thought she'd be here. I thought she'd come." Sam says, "We're doing okay, right? Have I done anything really stupid? Have I screwed it up for the both of us?" Just sad.
Yeah, I think he's just like, oh my God, I feel like a failure as a dad. I think that's this moment of him just being like, I shouldn't have dated Victoria. I was stupid. You're more important.
Mm-hmm.
Then Annie runs to the Empire State Building, but they tell her the observation deck is already closed. And she tells the security guard that she was supposed to meet someone there, and the security guard recognizes this as a scene from An Affair to Remember, which is his wife's favorite movie, so he lets her go up.
Lucky. But right as her elevator opens, we see Sam and Jonah get in the elevator to go down, like in a separate elevator, and so they just missed each other. Annie realizes that no one is up there anymore, and she takes a minute to at least check out the view from the Empire State Building. And while she's on the deck, she finds a kid's backpack, and this is Jonah's. And as she picks it up, Sam and Jonah walk back out onto the deck, and Annie walks up to them and they stare at each other. Because obviously Sam and Annie recognize each other. Annie already knew him, but Sam has seen her twice before now. Sam says, "It's you. I saw you in the street." Jonah asks if she's Annie, and she says yes. Sam says, "You're Annie?" Because he's been dismissing this letter the entire time.
Yeah, he's like, this is some crazy person that wants us to go to New York, but you don't even know her.
Even though he's been fascinated with this woman that he's seen 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then they share kind of a moment looking at each other until the security guard clears his throat.
And then Sam says, "We better go, shall we?" And he takes her hand. And you can tell that in this moment they feel the, quote, magic that everyone has been talking to them about. Because I think both of the stories where they talk about magic, they mention touching when they touched each other's hands for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3 of them walk out together, and Annie and Sam just keep staring at each other like they can't believe what's happening. When they get in the elevator, Annie just looks at him and says, "Sam, it's nice to meet you." And Jonah just smiles up at them, and the elevator doors close. And that's the end.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
Cute.
I also loved that this isn't a rom-com that ends in a kiss. Like, they all end in a kiss, right? In, like, the first kiss, usually.
Right.
Not this one. And I like that. Felt realistic.
Yeah, it's just, like, hopeful. And I love how included Jonah is in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. It's sweet. I'm so glad we did this one.
Me too. One of my faves.
Yay. Well, this was a nice send-off, Megan, for your last episode.
I know. I'm so sad. It's so bittersweet.
I know.
But we are recording this decently in advance, so hopefully I'll be back very soon.
We can't wait to have you back, but we are so happy and excited for you. Actually, I should speak for myself. I am so happy and excited for you. I can't wait. Thank you.
And thank you guys for all of your very sweet messages. I announced that I was pregnant on our Nobody Wants This episode, and I got some very sweet messages and some great advice from some moms. So thanks. I really appreciate it.
Did they follow you on Instagram and message you? Oh my gosh, you guys are so cute. You're the best.
I know. I will probably post an update when the baby gets here, which is before you guys are hearing this episode. So if you want to check that out, my Instagram is @_Megan K. Bradley.
Yay.
Hey, you.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and I'll see you next week.
Bye.